Welcome back. Now, in the second session on this Planet AR application, we are going to make all our assets ready and we are going to build the user interface. Now, as I shown you in my previous session, when we launch the application, the first thing the user is going to see is an user interface which has 8 buttons representing 8 planets. So, this user interface we are going to create in this session. So, to create this, all the required user interface is created in Photoshop. To save time, I have already created it and I am sharing this resource. So, what I have done is, along with this all this video series, I have shared you a link. If you go to that link, you are going to download a file, planetarresources.zip. This file, download it to your machine, right click and choose extract to extract these files to a folder. So, when you extract these files, you have one folder called textures, and if you open these textures, there are two texture folders. One is planet textures and UI textures. The first thing, before you are now in this planet textures, you have the 8 planets textures that we use for these 8 planets, and in UI textures you have one container, one background image, then you have one back button, then home heading, planet heading, and then you have this 8 buttons representing 8 actually the planets. Now, actually I had developed this application in Kannada. So, this application was meant for Karnataka Kannada students. What I want you to do is, if you come back to your resources, there is a PSD folder, and here if you open, if say for example, if I open logo.psd, now what you can see here is I have provided you with a Photoshop file where I want you to customize these texts. Okay, now you have Kannadadalli Kalike here. Instead of Kannadadalli Kalike, you can just type here learning solar system. So, like this you can type your own text or the title here in your own language, whether it might be English, Hindi, Malayalam, Gujarati, in any language you add your own texts. And here at the bottom you have Parikalpane St. Joseph Samstay. So, in the place of this you can even type your name, say for example type concept by, and then what you have to do is enter and you type your name or your roll number. Say for example like this, you can write your name, and this type of customization you do it in Photoshop. And after you do this, go to file, choose save for web, that is export, save for web, and in the PNG format you can save these files in the same folder where actually I have provided you these files. In the Planet AR resources textures, UI textures, you can save this. So, in this way you can customize your work. So, right now I will cancel it, I am going to use the original only. So, like this you customize all the textures, and once you have customized all the textures that we are going to use, that is this UI textures, once you have customized all these buttons and textures, then what you now do is come back to Unity, come to assets folder, open your textures folder here, select these two folders and drag it to this assets folder. So, when you drag it to the assets folder, so you have two folders here, planet textures and UI textures. So, if I double click it, you can see all those items added over here. But now here only thing is, in case of UI textures, I want these textures to be a 2D sprite because I am going to use it as a button. So, for this what you have to do is select all the textures in this UI file, select this, and with shift select all the files, and in texture type choose Sprite 2D and UI for all, and if you click outside it is asking unapplied import setting for 13 files. Do you want to save it? It is saying click save. So, when you save it, immediately you can see now these are appearing as a different icon. You are seeing an arrow here. See, for every icon you are seeing an arrow because these are now represented as Sprite 2D. Okay. So, this conversion you have to do, and once you have converted it, now come back to scenes, and in scenes I will start with home screen. I will double click home screen to open it, and in this home screen, before I start building the game, I will come to the game, and here we are building this application for a mobile phone with portrait mode. So, for this reason, in game display I will come to free aspect, and here I am going to choose 1920 into 1080 portrait. So, this will be our game size. So, if required you can also add your own preset here. Say I want to set up a different preset for iPhone 14 Pro Max, means you can type iPhone 14 Pro Max and set its horizontal width and vertical width of the screen or the screen resolution of your phone and click OK. But right now I am using this 1920 into 1080 setting. Now I will come back to scene here, and in my scene I will right click, and to add this user interface I will right click and I will come to UI, and in UI I am going to add a canvas. This is the main canvas that we are going to use, and I am going to call this as UI underscore canvas. So, I have given it the name as UI underscore canvas, and right now see this canvas is somewhere here, I am not able to see at all. So, when you are building this user interface, what you do is in the scene view you have one option here called 2D. Click on this 2D to enable 2D view and double click on UI canvas. So, now you can see the entire canvas area. Now, the next thing I want is I want to first add a background. How am I going to add the background? I will come to UI canvas, I will right click here, and I am now going to create a new UI element called as image, and I will call this as background. And right now this background image is a small block image. I want this background image to fill the entire screen. So, for this you can, with this background image object selected, come to the inspector, and in the top you have rect transform, and in that on the left hand side you have certain options. Okay. Press Alt on your keyboard and click on this, and you choose this bottom line right corner option here, and you can now see this image is filled for the entire screen. The entire screen has this image now. But only thing is this is now white, we have not attached any image to it. So, to attach image to it you have source image here, click here, and in the source image choose background. So, now I will close this. You can see you have a star background, and we are going to use this star background as our background of our user interface. Then I need a title at the top. So, our application title, it should appear at the top. So, for this I will come back to UI canvas, right click, and I am going to add one more UI image, and I am going to call this as heading. And again here for this heading I am going to come to source image, and in this textures you have one texture called home heading. So, select this, and after you select this I will close this, and here in the image setting click on set native size. So, when I click on set native size you have this on the large scale, but this is very big. I want this to fit inside my mobile screen. So, for this I will come to scale, I will enable uniform scale and I will type 0.5 and it is scaled down to 0.5. Now, with this selected, with Alt pressed, I will click here and I will choose align top. See, this is aligned to the top. So, I have our title ready here. So, we have added the title. I will go to file and choose save. Now, the next thing I want is I want to add all the buttons here. So, to add the buttons, I will now select the heading, and here one thing I will make is this 0.5 is looking very small. I will change it to 0.7 and see. Okay, 0.7 is fine. And second most important thing that I forgot is come back to UL canvas, and here you have canvas scaler. It is set to constant pixel size. Constant pixel size means now what happens is when you run your application, see, you may run this application on a 5-inch phone, on a 6 inches phone or 4.5 inches phone. Now, irrespective of the size of the phone, the actual display remains the same. However, what I need is when the display is big, my screen should become big. When the display of the device is small, the screen should become small. So, for this, in this UI scale mode, instead of constant pixel, I choose scale with screen size. I will choose this option, and with this option selected, I will come back to heading and I will set its size back to 0.5 now. Okay, this appears fine. Now, the next thing I need is to add the buttons. So, to add the buttons, I am going to put all the buttons in one container. How do we create a container? You already know, by creating an empty object. So, for this I will come back to UI canvas, right click, and I am going to create empty, and I am going to call this as button handler. I will give it the name as button handler, and I want this button handler to fill the entire screen. As I told last time, to fill the entire screen, come here in the rect transform, come to this option, press Alt and click here and choose the bottom right future. So, now this button handler is filled with the entire screen. However, I doesn't want the buttons to overlap on the top text. So, I will come to the top and drag it slightly down like this. Approximately I will set a top margin of around 250. Okay. So, now inside this button handler, we are now going to add our buttons one by one. So, for this, in button handler, I will right click and I am going to now add a UI image, and I am going to call this image as Mercury underscore button. I have given it the name as Mercury underscore button, and this again I will set its width and height to around 250 by 250, and after this I want this to be on the left hand side. So, I will click alt click here and align it to the left. However, I doesn't want it to snap to the edge corner. I need some gap. So, for this what I will do is I will come to this X position and I will move it by around 200. This is fine, I think, and Y it is moved by 125, and that is fine, or Y also I will move it by around by minus 150. This is fine, and this button I have called it as Mercury button, and for this Mercury button in source image I will click here and I am going to select the Mercury button. If you scroll down, you have Mercury button, I will select it. So, this image is applied over here. So, we have our first component ready. So, this appears to be slightly small. I will even make it 300 and see, okay, 300 by 300. Now, I will select this Mercury button and I will press Ctrl D or right click and choose duplicate. Now I will press F2 and I am going to call this as Venus button, and this Venus button I will alt click on this alignment in rect transform and I will align it to the right, and here again on the X it is showing minus 150, I will set it to minus 200 so that this gap and this gap is the same, and let Y position be minus 150 only. So I created two buttons, Mercury button and Venus button. I will select both now. I will press Ctrl D, it duplicates, and then I am going to drag this down like this, and I will place it somewhere to this position, somewhere here, and here now I will select Mercury button, and in Y I will move it exactly by minus 450, okay, and I will press F2, and I am going to call it as Earth button. So this is Earth button, EARTH underscore BTN, Earth button, and for this Earth button in source image I am going to select Earth here. So I have selected Earth. Now I will select the Venus button and I will set its X position to minus 450, and I am going to call this, press F2 and call this as Mars button. I will call this as Mars button, and now I will come here in the source image and I will change it to Mars button. So where is Mars? Okay, here you have the Mars button. Now I select all these four buttons, then press Ctrl D to duplicate it, and I will drag it down like this. Dragging it down like this, approximately I will move it to this position. Okay, this appears to be fine. Only thing is the gap between these two are larger. So what I will now do is I will select Mars and Earth and I will slightly move it to the top. So instead of minus 430, I will minus 430 is good. Okay, so I have set Earth minus 430, Mars minus 430. This is fine. Now I am going to now select this fifth item here, Mercury button 1, press F2, and I am now going to call this as Jupiter underscore button. And for this Jupiter button in the source image I am going to select Jupiter. So where is Jupiter? It is here. So I have added Jupiter. Then similarly I select the next item here, which is this Venus underscore button 1, press F2, and I am going to now call this as Saturn underscore button. And for this Saturn underscore button in source image I am going to select the Saturn. And similarly now I select this Earth button 1, I will press F2 and I am now going to call this as the Uranus underscore button. And for this Uranus button in source image I am going to choose the Uranus texture. Okay. And finally I will select Mars underscore button 1, press F2, and I am going to call this as Neptune button. And for this Neptune button in source image I am going to choose Neptune. So now as you can see, our user interface is ready. We have made our user interface ready. Now go to File and choose Save to save this user interface. So in this session we imported all the assets and we have built our user interface. Now in the next session we are going to start with the augmented reality scenes. So, let us continue it with it in from our next session. Thank you.